Greetings fellow guitar travellers, it's Rowan J Parker here and welcome to another YouTube video. Now today is the 8th of August 2013 and it was exactly 1 year ago today that I started placing videos on my YouTube channel, and so far the response has been really fantastic. So I want to thank everybody who's watched the videos, everyone who's subscribed, who's liked, who's commented, who've shared the videos with other people. It really does seem that you're getting a lot out of them, and I fully intend this just to continue into the foreseeable future. Basically till I drop down dead, you'll be having YouTube videos from me. So today's video is a little bit different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Just who the hell is this Rowan J Parker character anyway? Because those of you that have watched my videos know that sometimes it's a bit crazy, it's a bit wacky. He's this nutty Scotsman who seems to sit there and shred a lot, and then sometimes he does jazz things, and then he does these interesting theory videos and so on. But who is he? Just who is this guy? So that's what this video is all about. A little bit about me, my history, my background, the stuff that I've done, which you might find interesting, or not, possibly. So you should be able to find out a bit about me. By the end of the video you'll say, well, that's who that Rowan J Parker guy is. Alright, so here we go. Okay, so this video is recorded in August 2013 and currently I'm 42 years old, and I've got absolutely no idea how that happened, because the last time I looked I was about 19. So boom, last 20 years just gone by in the blink of an eye. But on the other hand, I've done a lot in 20 years, so maybe it's been worth it. So what can I tell you about myself? I've been playing the guitar currently for 27 years. And so on that basis I'm probably nowhere near as good as I could or should be, but that's how long I've been playing. I started playing when I was about 15 or thereabouts, and I'm pretty much completely self-taught by ear, which was initially extremely hard to do. So I will give you a little bit of a potted history, a sort of linear timeline of me starting playing guitar and sort of the various things I've done over the years until we reach this point. So, starting playing at 15 years old, why did I pick up the guitar? Well, for no more better reason than I thought the guitar would be cool to play. It was a completely shallow and vacuous reason I started to play the guitar, and I had no concept of the difficulty of the instrument. I just thought I'd be able to pick the guitar up and play by magic. And as soon as I held the guitar for the first time, I realised that number one, that wasn't going to happen, and number two, that the guitar is an extremely difficult instrument. I realised that instantly. But rather than be discouraged by that fact or that knowledge, I just thought, I've got to learn to play, I'm going to learn to play. And it was probably the first time in my life that I was able to really focus on one thing and do it relentlessly, because up to that point I'd been a total basket case as a teenager and had been unable to get it together at school, academically, or anything at all. And really, you know, I was in a terrible mental state as well. So it's fair to say that, you know, getting into music and getting into the guitar really saved me from becoming, you know, something far worse. I could quite honestly imagine me as an addict of some kind, you know, drug addict or an alcoholic or something like that, you know, with no direction. So it's very true to say that music did save me when I was 15 years old. So right from the beginning I was ridiculously focused on guitar, and basically that's all I did, to the exclusion of all else, which was great for my guitar playing but terrible for other aspects of my life, because my academic performance at school was horrendous. I really either didn't go to school or, you know, kidded on, I was sick and just stayed in and played the guitar all day, or I used to wait till my parents went out to work and then come in and just sit and play my guitar, which was terrible really. And I look back on that period and think that was really the wrong thing to do, but it's the only thing I could do at the time, and at least it was something I was able to focus upon. What was I listening to at that time? Well, it's quite embarrassing to admit, but I was listening to a lot of 1980s sort of new wave rock, and that included bands like U2, Simple Minds, The Cure, Echo and the Bunnymen, a lot of stuff. And that's the stuff that initially I learned to play. As I say, self-taught by ear. My cousin could play the guitar a little bit, and he showed me a few riffs and a few chords, a few U2 songs. I remember learning the solo from Sunday Bloody Sunday and getting that down and thinking, oh my god, that's amazing, I can play that. But within about, I would say about 6 to 8 months, I was starting to pick things up orally, you know, just by listening. And I can remember the absolute triumph of the first day that I actually learnt something from a record. And we've got to remember it was a record back in those days, it was vinyl, no CDs. So the way that I did it is I stuck the needle on the record and listened to the first note of this little melody and looked all over the guitar until I found that note, and then did it with the next note and the next note. And it only took me hours and hours and hours to work out this very simple 8-bar melody, but by the end of the afternoon I'd learnt it, and that was a major breakthrough for my playing. I remember that quite clearly, and from that point on I just became like a sponge, and I just get an album and learn it front to back, learn all the songs in it, all the riffs, all the chords, everything. After being playing guitar for about a year, my musical taste radically changed, and I stopped listening to that sort of guitar playing, and I frankly got into heavy rock, heavy metal. I remember I was given a cassette tape, it shows you how old I am, cassette tape of Black Sabbath's greatest hits, and I had to learn a song called Paranoid, which of course we all know, which was amusing at the time because I couldn't play power chords. So I had to learn that song, and then I started listening to the rest of the album, and I quite enjoyed it. I liked Tony Iommi's sort of blues, pentatonic influence playing, and I started to pick up a lot of that. And on the reverse side of this tape was Iron Maiden's debut album. It's called Iron Maiden, and at first I absolutely hated this album because it just sounded like all heavy metal noise to me. But I remember there's one pivotal song called Strange World, which had a lot of sort of clean phaser type guitar and this awesome soaring guitar solo. And that moment was a real moment of inspiration for me, and I thought, I've got to learn to play that, I've got to learn to play like that. And before I knew it, I was listening to, the whole album and getting into it. And from that point, I got into a lot of heavy rock. So I got into Black Sabbath, I got into Iron Maiden, AC/DC, also like Rush, and various other bands of that sort, Randy Rhoads, playing with Ozzy and all that sort of thing. So my musical taste after I'd been playing for about 1 year really, really altered, and I became basically a rocker. And I think it was round about the time that I heard Randy Rhoads, who for me was the first properly good rock guitar player I'd ever heard. Then I got very, very interested in the mechanics of the guitar and how to play and technique. I'd always been interested in music and how it fitted together, and I wanted to know about that. But when I heard a player like Randy with his technical facility, that really did inspire me to try and develop my technique. And of course I heard Randy, who was awesome. But when I heard Yngwie, that was an incredible pivotal moment, because at that point, Yngwie's guitar playing was so far ahead of everyone else, it was just ridiculous. He possessed a completely unique harmonic vocabulary, his level of technique was just out of this world, his picking was phenomenal. He still is a fantastic player. So once I heard players like him, then my playing went really towards this kind of very technically focused, heavy rock, neoclassical sort of thing. And from the period of about maybe, let's say about 16 and a half to 18 up to I went to music college, that sort of 18-month or possibly 2-year period, I just practiced my ass off, and I got totally into neoclassical rock, neoclassical metal. So the guys I listened to at that time, I listened to Satriani and I listened to Vi, of course, because I love those guys. Passion and Warfare came out, I think it must have been around about 1990, and I had Suffering with the Alien as well. I listened to those guys. Yngwie, massive fan of Yngwie. Found Vinnie Moore, who I still love as a player. Listened to a lot of Vinnie Moore, Tony McAlpine, all the kind of good melodic 80s shredders. I had all the Shrapnel records on vinyl, which I've still got in a cupboard somewhere. So that was great. I practiced like mad, and it was round about that time that the way that I currently play, the way that I sit, and my hand position, thumb position, all that started to evolve. So I've been playing that way a long time. A lot of people watch me play and assume that I must have been classically trained or something like that. That's not the case. I just play that way because it was the only way that I could play the sort of stuff I was listening to, which was all this 80s neoclassical rock. So by that point, I'm probably playing the guitar for about 2.5 years, and believe it or not, at that time I actually started teaching guitar as well. Because my technique advanced very quickly, I became known in the local area as this guy who you want to hear this guy play because he can shred, And that back in the 80s was pretty unusual. Not many players could shred. It's totally de rigueur now, everyone can shred. But back then, not many people could. So developed this local reputation as a shredder, and I started giving lessons even though I knew very little about music really. I just showed them the stuff that I knew, which was basically all my stolen Paul Gilbert licks. But it was popular, and I had was teaching from that really early stage, and found that teaching is something I really, really loved, and it's a thing that stayed right with me right through the years. The ability to impart something to somebody else and get them to understand and get them to develop their own skills. I think actually I've come to realise that I enjoy doing that more than almost anything else. So I really do love playing the guitar, and I've done tons of gigs over the years, but the thing that really does it for me is teaching. So that takes me to the point around about 1990 when I went to study music. And the place I went to study music was in Perth. Now this was a little bit interesting because as a child, I'd grown up in the city of Perth, and I'm talking about Perth, Scotland here, not Perth, Western Australia. I'd grown up in the city of Perth and left when I was about 12 or 13 years old and lived down in the Glasgow area. There's a place called Dumbarton. Lived there for about 7 years. So it's ironic that I ended up going back to Perth to study music, but that's what I ended up doing. And actually to study, what at the time was contemporary music, for a better word, want of a better word, rock music at that time was unheard of in the early 90s, to be able to go on a college course and actually study electric guitar. So at the time, Perth was the only place in the UK that offered any sort of contemporary music or rock music course, and that's the course I was on. And I was on that course for 3 years, from 1990 to 1993. And I've got mixed opinions about my time at Perth. Some of it was very good, some of it I thought was not so good, which is probably the case of a lot of you who've been to music college or been to uni to study music. Some bits were fantastic, other bits it wasn't the best use of your time. There was one guy at Perth who really helped me, and he was called Laurie Hamilton, and he was my guitar teacher in Perth College. Now, unfortunately, Laurie has died very recently, just in the last couple of months, which is a tragic loss because he was an absolutely fantastic guy, a great musician and an absolutely wonderful teacher. And I owe a massive debt to Laurie in terms of him getting me to look at music in a completely different way, because when I went to study music in Perth, I was basically a one-dimensional shredder. I could play widdly metal, but the idea of being in a funk band or just playing something simple for a pop song just would never have occurred to me. There's a whole world of music out there that I had really no idea about. So he introduced me to a really wide range of stuff, including jazz. He also helped get my reading together. He was incredibly patient, answered tons of questions that I had about music and music theory. He was absolutely wonderful. So there are not many people that you meet in your musical life who you consider inspirational, but I certainly consider Laurie to be absolutely inspirational. He was wonderful to me, and it's a great loss that he's gone. So my time at Perth College ended in 1993. Now, unfortunately, like a lot of music students, they sort of finished their music course and then they seem to hang about in whatever city they were studying in, and that's what happened to me. I was in a relationship at the time, and I basically stuck around in Perth for about 18 months or 2 years after I finished college, and this was not a good period in my life at all, because I wasn't really playing my guitar much. I was in a band, a rock covers band. We did sort of fitful gigs now and then, but really in terms of musical direction I was just drifting, and I wasn't happy personally. I wasn't happy in my relationship, and I certainly wasn't happy with my guitar playing. And it really got to a point, or came to a head, in 1995 where I was really so pissed off and depressed with everything that I seriously considered quitting playing guitar. Maybe not absolutely completely, but certainly not pursuing it as a career anymore, because I really just didn't feel that I was going to be the sort of player I wanted to be. My life wasn't really going in a particularly good direction, and so I thought, well, let's just have a complete change of direction. So I thought about this for a while, and I went off on one of these sort of retreats, to get my head in order. And what happened there is I realised that the problem really wasn't, the guitar. It was what I was doing with the guitar, and it was the state of my life at the time. So what I decided to do was completely change my life, which was quite painful to do because I had to leave a lot of things behind. Basically, I ended my relationship. I moved from Perth to Glasgow, where luckily my mother had a house and she was away working, so I could stay there. And musically, I just decided that the only way I was going to get away from the sort of things I was doing was basically to dump them completely and start something completely new. So what I did at that point when I moved to Glasgow in 1995 is I dumped all my electric guitar playing completely. I found a teacher in Glasgow who taught classical guitar, and I started studying classical guitar, which was a big you know, it was a painful transition, because in terms of playing classical guitar, I was a complete beginner. I couldn't use my right hand fingers at all. Left hand worked okay. My reading was, despite having done some of it at college, it was shocking. I could not read properly. So I found a great teacher in Glasgow called Joe McGowan, and he taught me for about 3 or 4 years. And in that period I did an intense amount of academic study. I did from 0 to grade 8 ABRSM classical guitar. I did grade 8 London College of Music. I did grade 8 ABRSM music theory, all in incremental steps, and that lasted about 2 years, where I was just, you know, doing exams every, you know, 2 or 3 months. I was sitting a grade exam or doing a music theory paper or something like that. And around about that time, I was seriously into classical guitar, and I really thought, well, yeah, I'm going to be a concert classical guitarist. That's what I wanted to do at that point. And I auditioned for the Royal Academy in Glasgow to play classical guitar. I think that the reason that didn't come out that way is because after a point with classical guitar, even though I really loved it, and I still do love it, although I don't play it very much anymore, the problem with it for me is that it's very solitary. You're basically sitting on your own, practicing on your own, and the pieces, if you want to play the big pieces, the virtuoso pieces, are difficult, and you have to spend a long time on them. And for me, this just got a bit overwhelming. I felt too isolated just sitting in my room practicing, you know, this piece for however long it would take to get it together. And I like playing with other people. You know, I've pretty much always played in a band right from the very beginning. After playing guitar for a year, I was in a band, and I was in bands right the way through college, and even that period, you know, between leaving college and still living in Perth, I was in a band. So this business of just sitting in my room, solitary, sort of 3-4 hours a day practicing, I just ended up not being able to handle that, and I wanted the interaction with other people. And so at that phase, that particular phase probably lasted from about 1995 up to probably about 1998 or 1999, something like that. Around about that time, I met a couple of guys who could play jazz. One of them was a drummer, a great drummer, called Les Barrett, who I still play with today. And the other one is a bass player called Kevin Mullen, who's an absolutely diamond guy. And I mean, I was interested in jazz. I loved jazz, but I didn't understand it and didn't know how to play it. But when I met up with these guys who really did know how to play it, we used to jam together, and they were amazingly patient with me. And you know, they put up with me being rubbish, basically, for the first few months until I started to get my jazz playing chops together. And so from that point, round about, it's almost got to be about 1999 maybe, something like that, I really got into jazz. And that's really the sort of path I've been on ever since then, in terms of, you know, my musical interest and what I like to play. So although a lot of the videos I put up are all mental shred stuff, that actually comes from a period of my playing which is a long time ago now. And the stuff that really interests me is the jazz and the fusion stuff. So there'll be a lot more of those videos coming up next year. So that kind of, you know, details my sort of, you know, musical path I've been on. There's been various other diversions. I got into country guitar for about maybe, you know, 6 months or 8 months. I played slide guitar for about a year, but I don't play any of these things massively well. I also, you know, over the period I've learned to play bass, and I can play reasonable piano, I can play some basic drums, but primarily, you know, I'm a guitar player. So that's my musical development, I think, without going into any more detail than that. I'll tell you a little bit more about my sort of teaching background and that sort of side of things, because professionally for me that's been the thing that I've done the most. I've taught more than anything else. So, as I say, I used to teach really early on before I went to music college, after just been playing for a couple of years. And then when I was at college, I didn't teach very much, but I would come home some weekends, come back to Glasgow some weekends and teach. And I was teaching during the summer recesses in between, you know, the academic years. And when I moved back to Glasgow in 1995, I started teaching pretty much full time. So you could say with fair accuracy that my career as a full-time musician began in 1995, and I've been very fortunate just to be able to make a living from music ever since that point. So it's getting on for 20 years now. It's not quite 20 years, but it's about 20 years I've regarded myself as being a full-time musician. It's been my only source of income, and most of that income has actually been through teaching, because it's the thing that I think I love the best and I think I do the best. So I've been teaching full-time from 1995. I was teaching for about 5 years, and that was just privately. I built up quite a good private business. Around about 2000, I got a phone call from Yamaha Music UK. They have a music school, or had a music school in Glasgow, and they were launching a guitar course, and they were looking for guitar teachers, and I was quite well known as a local guitar teacher, so I was invited down to audition. Auditioned, everything went well, so I became a fully trained Yamaha teacher, and I'm still with Yamaha, and that's now 12-13 years, and I'm now the most experienced Yamaha guitar teacher in the UK. I'm also one of their lead instructors, so it's my job as a Yamaha instructor to train the teachers and professional development, evaluate them, so on. So I've been working with Yamaha for 13 years, which has been a great thing, fantastic lot of opportunities. Lots of other opportunities have flowed from the fact that I became a Yamaha teacher. So just a plug for Yamaha here. If you ever get the opportunity to become a Yamaha teacher, do it, because it's fantastic. It's a fantastic experience. Around about 2006, maybe 2007, I started working for an examination board called Rock School, who are quite big in the UK, and they deliver graded exams in contemporary styles, rock music styles, and I was one of their lead examiners for about 5 years, from about 2007 to about 2011, 2012. And that was a great experience because I got to go all over the world. I examined all over the place. I went to Hong Kong, Mexico, Dubai, Malaysia. Oh, I can't remember all the places, a lot of places. And you got to see a lot of the world, so it was really, really good. And it led to some other opportunities in India. So that was great. Because I got to see guitar players from all over the world, and you got to see everything from atrociously bad to unbelievably gifted. And it wasn't just guitar players I was examining, it was guitarists and drummers and bass players and keyboard players and singers, and it's the whole panoply. So you got to see a huge range of ability, and you did see some exceptional things occasionally. I remember in Malaysia seeing a 13-year-old drummer who was just absolutely out of this world, and then seeing a piano player in India, though clearly had some problem with autism. Wow, what an amazing player. He's just left me with my jaw on the floor. So there are some amazingly talented people out there, no matter where they are in the world. What else can I tell you? When I finished up with Rock School, and this was mainly because of a disagreement between me and them over working for a company out in India. There's a company in India called Furtado's who have a chain of music schools, and I was hired by them to create their course, their syllabus, which is a guitar syllabus, a drum syllabus, and a keyboard syllabus, and that's what I'm doing for them still as an ongoing basis. So if you live in India, especially if you live in Mumbai, check out Furtado's music schools. They offer a really good course, the one that I helped develop, which is called the Rockstar course, and you can get a version of this course on my website as well. So I'm not really sure what else to tell you now. Band experience. I've got probably about 25 years band experience all in, because I've been playing pretty much from the point I started playing guitar for about a year, almost continuously, with just a couple of years laid off where I wasn't playing in a band. I played much less recently because of my commitments with Rock School, and then with Yamaha, and then also with Furtado's now. So I'm really involved very much in educational material and syllabi and things like that, and that's the stuff that really interests me. Doing gigs doesn't massively interest me really anymore. It's not the sort of thing I feel I'm put on the planet to do, mainly because a gig is transitory. You can do a great gig, it can be fantastic, you can have a good time, people can really enjoy it, but the next day it doesn't have very much of an impact on them. Whereas if you take someone and you teach them for say 5 years, it has a massive life-changing impact on them, and that's really what I think is a more worthwhile thing for me to do. So I think I'll pretty much wrap up there. I don't want to rabbit on at great length, which I know I've already done about me and my musical experience. But it's an interesting old journey. And in the last year I've started doing the YouTube channel, and I've done my website, which has been great for me, really, because I feel I've got to the stage now in my life where I've got enough experience with the music and with the guitar and with the industry, and I've got a lot of stuff to share back, and there's a lot of stuff I want to share back for free, because you've got to leave some sort of positive legacy behind you. I think it's not just all about self-indulgence and self-aggrandizement. It's got to come a point where you think, well, in the balance, when they weigh my life at the end, is it going to be worthwhile You know, I'm going to have more on the positive side than the negative side. Am I going to contribute more than I take? And so for me, if I contribute more on this side than I take, then that for me is a life that was worthwhile living, and that's what I aim to do for the remainder of it. Well, thank you very much for persevering with this monster long video right to the very end. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'll see you again in another of my YouTube videos, more Fusion to come later on in the week. Till then, it's been Rowan J Parker. Farewell.